you want more?
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
So in 2020, you came back, you put out the 2020 record. You did a brilliant thing in that you recut Burning Heart, which a lot of the U.S. Audience was familiar with. What's the overall thoughts on the relaunching of Vandenberg, going into the second record since?
Well, it was it was a situation that I had before this, before I went back under the name of Vandenberg.
Mm-hmm.
I had a band in Europe called Vandenberg's Moonkings.
Yes.
And we made a couple of very cool albums that I was very happy with. The problem was the singer of the band, a good friend of mine by now, he has this big farming company in Holland, so he couldn't be out of the country for more than 1 or 2 days. So I really started missing international touring.
Right.
So I thought there's only one way to solve that, is to put Moonkings in the fridge and start put another band together, and it was kind of logical to start under the name of Vandenberg again, because my manager and my record company both said, well, you're not going to come up again with another name, they said.
Right.
Yeah, why not use the name Vandenberg? Fine. So that's what I did. And we recorded a 2020 album, got a great reception. And what happens then? COVID.
Yeah.
So we couldn't tour. We just basically had to wait for 2.5 years. And by then, the singer that I recorded the album with had taken on a bunch of other shows and stuff. So our schedules didn't match anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I had no choice then to start working with a different singer, which is Mats Leven on this, who sings on the Sin album.
Right.
Fantastic singer, great ideas, also very creative and a lot of experience. He's toured the States, I think, twice with the Trans-Siberian Orchestra.
Yeah, right. Right.
So yeah, he's been around, so that's great, and he's a great frontman. I'm really happy, I'm very, very proud of his album, the Sin album.
Right. So I guess backing up a little bit, I mean, obviously people were pretty familiar with Ronnie Romero just because he seems to be, he performs
everywhere.
with a lot of bands, right? Yeah. And more recently, I think he was working with Blackmore and Rainbow. And then obviously he recorded that record with you, but it sounds like the original plan was to continue on with him. So it wasn't like a guest singer type of situation, it sounds like.
No, exactly. I never been a fan of revolving door bands, where there's a different lineup every time. I've always tried to avoid that, but in this case, I had no choice because I wanted to tour.
Right.
And Ronnie had taken on a bunch of stuff, and he was right because it's his living as well. But he lives in Romania, and over there in the COVID period, they could still do some shows here and there. So for him, he could just take on gigs. So when we were finally able to start booking a tour and shows, we had to wait, and then we couldn't book on those days because we had something going, and
right.
So it became too clumsy for everybody, including Ronnie. So we shook hands and we said, okay, who knows, somewhere in the future. But I felt really, really lucky to run into Mats Leven because he's like a world-class singer, as people can tell on this Sin album. And I thought, man, because I only knew of 3 singers that I know of who can handle this kind of material, and that's Dino Jelusic and Ronnie and Mats Leven. So, man, I was lucky that Mats just stopped with the band he had before that, and that he was a fan, because he told me that when he was in his mid-20s, his mom brought the first 2 Vandenberg albums from London to Gothenburg, where he lived. So he knew all the stuff.
Yeah, so he was familiar with your stuff. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was a very big surprise.
Yeah, and I was am a fan of Moonkings. I mean, 2 studio records, 1 acoustic record. I think you forgot to mention the acoustic record, but all good stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And I think your thought was, going back, and correct me if I'm wrong, you mentioned something about revolving doors. So you definitely probably didn't want Moonkings to become a revolving door either. That way you shut it down, right? Because you could have always got another singer and press forward with Moonkings.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't want to do that because I felt Moonkings had a certain character that, of course, also I love the voice that singer Jan has, but also we had a very, very unique chemistry on stage and off stage.
Yeah.
And I thought, nobody's going to stop us from at some point cutting out the album and do some Dutch shows, but maybe even international shows, because at some point I know that Jan, the singer, is going to sell his ranch, sell his farming company, and cash in, because it's a huge company. When Jan cashes in, he doesn't have to work the rest of his life, man. It's a big place. So, and we had this great chemistry, as I said, I'm definitely, I wouldn't be surprised if we're definitely going to do something like next year or the year after or something.
Cool. So Moonkings still, it could be in existence, you're saying. I mean, it's just kind of put aside for now.
Yeah.
Hey, out of curiosity, just throw this out there real quick, and then we'll move on to the new record, because I have it, I enjoy it, and actually saw you guys performing, you performing with the new lineup back in April. How big of a Ronnie Montrose fan are you?
Actually, I was not very familiar with it in Holland in those days. In Holland, Montrose was not that known. It was like for connoisseurs. But the funny thing is, one of my very best buddies is Danny Kamassi, the drummer from Montrose. Danny played with Whitesnake for 2 tours, and we became instant friends. We still in touch very regularly.
Yeah.
And so I asked Danny, come on, show me your stuff, So he had some Video 8 movies from those days, and I thought, wow, this Ronnie guy was a great player, man. I just wasn't really aware of it, because at the time when Montrose was big in the States, Dutch radio really sucked. I mean, it still does, but there was not really a rock show where they would play that kind of stuff. So I had to catch on later on, and it was a great band, of course, San Diego singing, and then he was on fire, and Ronnie, great player, and I always had the feeling later on that they might have been the blueprint for Van Halen. They recorded with Ted Templeman as a producer, Don Landry, the engineer, and I got to know Eddie over the years, and I asked him once, and he was a little bit vague about it, So, well, I wouldn't be surprised. It definitely must have been one of their, like role models or something.
Yeah. And the reason I ask this, because I hear a little Montrose in the Moonkings stuff that you released.
Oh, cool.
So some of that driving stuff. Yeah. And I know Montrose was huge in Europe. I just didn't know how much of a fan you were, how familiar you were. But you're right. Kamassi was on board. So the new record, Sin. I mean, that how did that come together? And I know you mentioned Mats is on board. How involved was he in the writing, and any feedback that he gave or provided you throughout the recording and writing of the process of this record?
I've always started ever since I was an early teen. I started with the music. I stumble upon a riff, or I stumble on a chorus, or bits and pieces, or a couple of things at the same time. So I started with making a structure of a song that excites me. So, like, for instance, when I get back into my recording room the next day, if it doesn't do anything for me, I don't even continue on it. But when I stumble upon a riff and I play it the next day on my iPhone, usually, I go, oh, that's pretty cool. I can imagine like a crowd going crazy over that or something, And that's usually when I start putting together like more of a song structure. And this time was the first time since I worked with David Coverdale and Whitesnake together on the songs. This was the first time that I worked together with Mats on the vocal melodies and the lyrics. And Mats has got really good ideas too. So we were bouncing off each other with the lyrics and the vocal melodies. One of us had an idea, and then what do you think of this? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we can try this or that too. So it was the vocal melodies and lyrics were definitely a combined effort.
Mm-hmm.
And then it seemed to work out great because I'm very happy with it.
Right.
And I basically found that I was planning with this record to turn up the whole thing just a notch. I wanted to be a little bit more aggressive, a little bit bigger sounding than the 2020 album. And I think it worked, because
Yeah.
it's I'm really happy with the sound when I put on my earphones and I play it. It's like you're in a rehearsal space with the band, and the band is kicking ass, and yeah, it turned out great.
And like I said, I mean, having caught you guys performing in April, wow. I mean, I saw you guys with the previous lineup, when you performed with
Yeah,
Ronnie, and that was solid, but this was equally as good. I mean, I think that's the one thing when there's a change in singer, you wonder how's that
yeah,
going to work, especially if you kind of latched onto a particular singer, right? I mean, your thing. I was thinking, oh, next record with Ronnie. I mean, like you said, he's probably going to dial it up a notch and see. I'm excited about that, but we didn't get that opportunity. But I agree with you. I think you did dial it up a notch and then just inserted a different guy that's equally as good.
yeah, yeah. You're right. That's how I feel about it too. It's I'm always very focused on keeping myself sharp and excite myself with what I'm doing, and
Mm-hmm.
absolutely try to evolve to stay away from like the automatic pilot syndrome. That
Yeah, right.
there's so many bands that go through the motions, and when you have a good band with good players and a good singer, it's pretty easy to fall into the trap and make a record that doesn't have that fire and that it doesn't have
Right.
the spark that you need, that
Yeah,
rock needs, because I
right.
think rock is useless if it doesn't have that.
And I think one of the things that like as you were mentioning, about dialing things up and then just maybe going through motions and stuff like that. I think a lot of times the classic artists focus on two or three good songs on a record with the idea we're going to play one or two of these in the set and then just kind of coast by and release subpar material, right?
Yeah,
And then that turns off the fans because
yeah,
you're really looking forward to some new stuff. I mean, I know the casual fans, they just want to hear the hits. They probably would just want to see hear the classic Vandenberg stuff like Burning Heart and so on and so forth.
yeah,
But I think some of the people that have rediscovered the band want to hear the new stuff, whether it's stuff off 2020
yeah.
or stuff off the new record. It's going to be challenging for you to draft a set list, I think, at this point between two solid current records and then the classic stuff.
Yeah, right. And also, we're going to do this United States tour
I saw that.
February and March next year.
I saw that.
Yeah, and
That
it's going
went
to be
on
exciting.
with Jeff Tate, which I think is a good pairing. I mean, he's got his loyal following, you got a loyal following, and both kind of regarded for the songwriting, and performance. So
Yeah, it's going to
what
be
a good
great. We're
pairing.
going to do half of the tour is we're going to headline, and the other half we got
Hmm.
the shared bill with Tate. I think it's going to be great. And yeah, for this tour, we're actually going to play a lot of Whitesnake material as
Oh
well.
wow, nice.
Um, yeah, yeah, because I've been in Whitesnake for 13 years, and
Sure.
people want to hear that stuff still.
Hmm.
Whitesnake is not around anymore, as people know,
Right, right.
and I'm really proud of the stuff that I was involved in, and so it's even more of a challenge to put an eclectic set together because there's so
Right.
many great songs to use. But it's going to be at the same time it's going to be relatively easy because
Hmm.
it's a luxury problem, as you can call it. You can
Sure.
just pick out the best songs and the most exciting set and put like a great pace in it. So it's going to
Yeah.
be
I
very
mean,
interesting and very exciting. I can't
yeah.
wait.
I mean, it sounds like a brilliant strategy. Again, in the process of reintroducing Vandenberg, you throw in the classic Whitesnake stuff, whether it's stuff that you directly played or performed on, or stuff that you co-wrote, or even some of the classic stuff which we know you performed live, and then inserting Vandenberg.
Yeah,
I mean, that's going to be crazy at that set list. I want to see what's on there when the time comes, but that sounds like a blast. I just got a
yeah,
couple more.
I'm really looking forward
Yeah,
to it.
I got a couple more questions and then I'll cut you loose. Thank you for your time. But
Oh,
one,
my pleasure.
what was it like working with Steve Vai?
This was really great. I mean, a lot of people thought, oh man, two guitar players going to be competition. I never look at music at all as competition because
Mhm.
for me, music is one of the things that you can't compete with because it's all about emotions for me.
Right,
And it's not like a sports match where you can say this guy was faster than the other one. And Steve, of course, everybody knows he's like a world class player.
right.
But our styles are so far
Hmm.
apart, so different. I'm like a completely melodic player. That's how I see it. And Steve has got his own universe that he plays in. He's got all these wacky
Right, right.
um,
Yeah.
bits and pieces that he does, and we really enjoy touring together. We're still great friends. We still stay in touch, and yeah, it was very exciting because, of course, as you know, it was the golden days of Whitesnake, and the shows we did were humongous. You would play for 30, 40, 50,000 people a night, whether it was
Right.
in Japan or in the
And then
States.
you guys did
For
Donington.
Donington, it was really exciting because the funny thing was, um, just 4 years before that, or no, probably 5 years before that, I was in the crowd at Donington because I was recording one of the Vandenberg albums in Jimmy Page's studios, where I recorded the first two Vandenberg albums were recorded in Jimmy Page's studios, and that was not too far away from Donington. So
Oh
I
wow.
went to see there, and that was one of the times that David asked me to join Whitesnake.
Right.
And then a couple of years later, you're headlining Donington yourself, so that was like
Surreal, huh?
surrealistic almost.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Well, surreal, just like you said. Yeah, right. Awesome. And the next question, I know you alluded to this, which I'm glad you did, Carmasi, because he did do a couple tours. And then one of them was in 97. And you had as the second guitarist, on next to you, was Steve Farris. What was it like working with him? And were you familiar with any of his work leading up to that?
No, actually, I wasn't. It was a little odd because Steve felt more like a session guy, and his attitude was a little bit like that, and he was a little bit of to everybody in the band, a little bit like a strange duck in the pond, so to speak. And he's a great player, of course, and as everybody knows.
Right,
I was not familiar with him. I was familiar with Mr. Mister, but
right.
he told me that he wasn't really involved in the big hits for
You're
Mr.
right,
Mister.
right. Yeah.
We came in later or something, so it was a little bit of a he also wasn't really a rock player in the style that Whitesnake
Hmm.
was operating in. As
Right.
good as he is,
Sure.
it didn't feel like it blended in the way like I did, for instance, with Steve Vai, or
Sure.
also with Warren DiMartini. We did a tour with
Oh, right.
Warren,
Oh, geez.
and that was in
Yeah.
'94. It was the greatest hits tour,
Yeah.
so to speak. And I really got on great. He's a fantastic player. I love the guy, and he blended right in. I think, and that was with Danny also, and Tony Franklin on bass.
Right. Franklin.
So
Jeez.
yeah, that was a great lineup. It was a little weird to do like a greatest hits type of
Hmm.
tour, but because there were a bunch of. Wait a minute, we didn't even tour States with that tour.
No,
We
no, you
only
didn't.
toured
Yeah.
Europe and Japan.
Right.
Yeah, that was a very different kind of tour, so to speak.
Yeah, no kidding. Real quick, you mentioned DeMartini. I mean, what was your initial thoughts? Did he have to audition or how did that all come to be?
No, it was just David and I knew he was a great player, and
Mhm.
he wasn't active with Red at that moment. Red kind of fell apart for the
Right.
300th time or something, and So yeah, we just got in touch with him, and he was excited and joined. We didn't do any auditions or anything because
Mm.
we knew he was a great player, you know, and he loves to do it. Very nice guy, blended in easily. He's very easygoing, great player. I love his playing.
Yeah, yeah, he definitely has like a bluesy feel to his playing for sure.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Last question, and I look forward to seeing Vandenberg on tour. Hopefully, add more dates. There isn't anything on the northwest end of the United States, but you know that could change with promoters, you know, catching wind that how well the shows are going to be received, and so on and so forth. Um, uh, one of the things that I asked you last time when I spoke with you when you were doing press for the 2020 record was about Manic Eden, and I think at that point you might have been in talks with maybe even the mascot about possibly reissuing that thing. Has there been any further talks on that? Or is there any movement on
Yeah,
that?
yeah. Your timing is impeccable because last week um, it was finalized. You know, that's it's going to be out somewhere next year.
Mm-hmm.
It would be great at some point, whenever, to be able to do a couple of shows. And then again, it was a great lineup, and I love the record still. It's still one of my favorite
Right.
records that I've ever recorded. And the band had so much potential, but then things
Right.
got sidetracked by all kinds of other
Sure.
forces and stuff. But who knows at some point, you know, because but it's definitely going to get re-released next year, so it's going to be fun.
Nice. Well, fantastic. Hey, Adrian, thank you for your time. Killer record, Sin, coming out shortly on Mascot, and tour coming up in 2024 with some dates with Jeff Tate. So that's awesome, and hopefully more dates to come.
Yeah,
So
I would definitely. The plan is on in somewhere later in 2024 to do the West Coast and more of the Midwest
nice,
and then North. And we're gonna, yeah, we're definitely finally we're gonna be able to focus on more shows in America because I really miss it playing there. You know,
fantastic.
I really do. I've been in Asia, so I can't wait to get back.
Well, yeah, and I can't wait to see what the set list is on opening night of that tour because I'm sure now that you mentioned that it's going to have a fair share of Whitesnake, fair share of Vandenberg, that's going to be wild, man.
Yeah, it's gonna be wild. I can't
Yeah.
wait. It's gonna be really exciting.
All right. Hey, Adrian, thank you so much. Take care, and I hope to talk to you again down the way.
Yeah, man, we will. We'll make sure we get to talk again.
All right. Well, take care, and thank you so much.
Thanks.